Hi, and welcome to this episode of Hiking Back in Time. I'm on the old CP rail line as it goes through Grand Forks, BC, and I'm standing right in front of the old train station. It's a great place to start a show about old trains, train tracks, trestles, and mines. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, we took a little drive out of Grand Forks with our crew, Brad and Lorraine Proctor, and Ivy, the camera operator, and we drove north on Highway 3 about 20 kilometers to the Phoenix ski area turnoff. Took a left, drove about a kilometer up that road, and then took a right onto this road that we're standing on right now. And as you can see from behind me, it's dead straight and pretty level. It's actually the old Great Northern Railway. And we drove about another 1.5 kilometers up the Great Northern Railway, and I'm standing right beside what was called the Oro Denoro mine, and it was a copper mine. And we're actually just below the Phoenix mine and another mine we're going to look at in a few minutes called the Emma mine. And they tried to extract copper from this mine. They found ore as far as 75 meters down. The story that I have is that they discovered the copper ore as they were constructing the railway, so they decided to put a little mine in here and try and pull the ore out. We'll go up and have a look and see how they took the ore out. They just pretty much blasted holes into the side of the mountain and followed the ore along as they went until it ran out, and then packed up and moved on. This is one of the typical little mines. And to give you some idea how the rail all connected and where we are on the side of the mountain, I'll give you a little bit of an explanation on the map. Okay, so we drove up from Grand Forks on Highway 3. We went all the way up here. We turned left on the Phoenix Road. And I'm just going to change maps here. We'll go to this map. And here's where we turned left, down here. And we drove along this little dotted line. This is the Great Northern, and we're at the Oro Denoro mine. And if you look, you can see this other rail line here. This is the CP rail, and the two of them are very close. And Brad and Lorraine just hiked up to the top of the Oro Denoro mine, and they were able to find the old CP rail. And we'll hike up there and have a look there. There's a story of a big train wreck in here, a derailment, and we might look and see if we can find some of the evidence of that. And then we'll head up to the Emma mine, which is just not very far up the road. So there's where we are now. So if you can see behind me, we're still at the Oro Denoro mine. This is what they would have called a glory hole, and with the glory hole, they just followed the ore stream and just kept blasting a hole. As long as they kept going in that direction, they would take the ore out. The quality of the ore here was really poor, about 1.5% copper. So it was an awful lot of work to get a very small amount of copper out of the mine. And there's several holes here. This one drops down further than I can even see, and there's a couple of more above, and we'll just go up and explore those quickly, and then we'll move on to the Emma mine, which is a little bit further up the road. I hiked just a little ways up the trail to the Oro Denoro mine, and as I went up, I can find all sorts of these green rocks here. And this is copper ore that's been left behind after they shipped out the ore. And you can see a lot of it on the hillside just above me. And I'm just going to step out of the way so you can kind of see it up there. Come on along. So as we hiked up towards the mine a little bit, you can see a lot of the green rocks at the entrance to the mine shaft, or glory hole as they call it. And there's quite a bit of shoring left in the inside of the hole as well. They would have used that to stabilize the ground, I guess, in the days, and probably to support the carts as they move the ore out of the hole. We're looking down into the hole that we just looked at from the outside, and the light from that hole must be coming from another hole above. And I'm in the entrance of the mine now, and there's glory holes in every direction. There's one above that goes out the top, and then another one that goes off into the left. It's a big dark tunnel that I'm not going into. And from the looks of it, they just blasted their way along and followed the ore, didn't waste their time on anything that wasn't worth excavating. I'm going to hike down back to the roadway and walk up a little ways, and we're going to go up another path and see if we can find the old CP rail line. We're looking down on the Great Northern Railway, and we're actually above what we just climbed into on the Oro Denoro mine. And we climbed up the hill a little ways, and here I am standing on the CP rail line. The two of them were so close together that it's amazing that they couldn't get together and, you know, share some of the resources to build rail lines. But there's a lot of differences between the two railways and how they extracted the ore. The Oro Denoro railway line from below on the Great Northern had bigger cars, and they ran on shallower rails but could carry more ore. And up at the CP rail up here, they traveled on steeper inclines, and they had to run smaller ore cars, so they couldn't extract as much. So all this differences of competition made it so that there was probably no way that they could ever share a rail line and share the resources. It's quite spectacular to see, and eventually these two rail lines, as you can see, they're slight at an angle together. They will join across, and one will cross over top of the other one. And there's a little bit more Oro Denoro mine above us, and you can see a few more shafts here. And we'll let Ivy get a few shots before we head down the CP rail and see where it goes. These two pieces of old train track rail line coming out of the ground here show that something's collapsed, or they were embedded in there for some reason. It's quite light rail. It's much lighter than what you'd see in the current modern day train lines. Good and solid. There's lots of steel still left in there. And another glory hole down below me, and there's remnants of another ore cart down there as well. I'm being pretty careful to stay away from the edge here. We're just across from where that old ore cart was, and I'm looking down into quite the glory hole here, and I'll let Ivy come in and show you how deep it is. I would not want to fall down in there. We came across another glory hole here. It's full of water. And there's a story that someone may have launched a kayak here and kayaked in there just to see how far it would go. I don't think it's where I'm going to go, and I have no idea how deep that is, but it's all part of the mine. So while we were overshooting the mine over there, Brad, our location scout, went off in exploration of other things to take photographs of, and he found this big rock. And the exciting thing about it is it's got lots of quartz in it, and you can see the quartz running up here and up in here and up in here. And that would have been really exciting for the miners, because if they were looking for copper and they discovered quartz, chances are they may be able to find some gold or silver as well, and gold and quartz go together. So this would have been a pretty exciting find. So still walking my way along the CP rail line to the point where the CP rail crosses over top of the Great Northern. And it's interesting as you hike along, you find all sorts of interesting artifacts like this metal chute, or it's some kind of a box. It could be part of a ore chute or something. And right off the side of the tracks, they just kind of disposed of things and unused, or maybe it was bent and didn't work anymore, so they didn't need it, left it there, and off they went. But we'll see what else we can find along this rail. It's interesting as you hike along and you start to see the way the forest is completely taking back what rail line devastation created in the past. And this rail line's probably well over 100 years old now. What was there is gone, and you can still find little remnants of things. Like if you look at this section here, you see lines of moss in the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, several, all in a line. And these are where the depressions are from the old railway ties, and they pulled the ties up, and because of the weight of the tracks on the ties, it's compressed the earth, and the moss grows at a different rate. So anytime you ever see multiple parallel lines on a trail like that that's flat, you can pretty much guarantee you're walking on rail line. And it's funny because as I was standing here talking to the camera, I just noticed over here, this pole that runs up the side here is an old telegraph pole, and you see wires on the top of it. It's collapsed now, but it would have carried lines for communications down on the track. So down below us from where we're standing is the Great Northern Line, and it goes across behind me where I'm standing, and I'm standing right at the footing of the trestle on the CP rail line. So I'm above. The CP rail line would have continued across the other side of what looks like a road, but is actually the rail line, and it headed out that way. Here's a piece of the old trestle here. You can see the square cut ends. Then we're going to head back to the Great Northern Line. We're going to climb down. We're going to take a little spur, and we're going to go and look at the Emma mine, where Ivy's going to take some great photographs and pretty pictures of the Emma mine, which is quite spectacular. We'll have a quick look around there. I won't spend a whole lot of time talking about it because it's very similar to the Oro Denoro mine, but I think it's prettier. And then after that, we're going to head along the Great Northern Line in search of Trestle 66. The remains of it anyway. It was a spectacular, huge, curving trestle that went over Deadman's Gulch. Here's a photograph of it. We're just about to enter the Emma mine site, and this is a pretty important sign and a pretty important thing to take note of when you're exploring any old site like this. There's a lot of danger in these mine sites, holes that you won't see and things to trip on, and it's really important that when you explore, if you decide to explore a site like this, you're extremely careful and don't get yourself in danger. And this sign was put up by the provincial government, so they're not saying stay out, they're saying just be really careful if you decide to go in there. All right, we drove from Grand Forks up the Highway 3 and turned off onto the road that goes to the Phoenix ski area. We drove along this line, which is the Great Northern Rail Line, and we stopped at Oro Denoro mine. And then we went and explored where the Great Northern Line crossed the BC, or the CP rail, crossed underneath. And we stood at that trestle there. And now we're at the Emma mine, and after that we're going to continue on the Great Northern Line down here, and we're going to look for this remains of Bridge 66 over Deadman's Gulch. It's a big old trestle. So first of all, we'll do a little bit of exploration at the Emma mine, and we're going to head off there now. So we're at the end of the Great Northern rail line where it breaks off from this roadway here and turns onto the big curving trestle Bridge 66. And it's quite a big trestle. We're standing right at this end here, and the trestle was a big curve and it came around to the other side. And we're going to hike down and see if we can find any of the remains of this trestle. It's one of my favorite things to do in the forest. We couldn't find any remains of the trestle at the end where the car is parked. So we found a trail that goes down into the creek and hikes up the other side. We couldn't find any remains of the trestle on that side at all, but as we look across, we can see one big tower on the other side. So it's pretty exciting to see that, and we'll hike over there and see what else remains over there. It's a little bit grown in here, but I'm down at the bottom now, right where the creek is, and I'm going to start hiking back up the other side to where the trestles are. Ooh, it's a bit of a climb up this side. I'm kind of breathing hard. It's quite a climb up, and the trail switches back and forth a couple of times, and as I was walking up, I happened to glance off to the side of the trail, as I usually do, and I noticed this big patch of puffball mushrooms down here, and it reminded me of what I used to do when I was a kid.
You're still a kid.
Still a kid. Well, this is well worth the hike. It's one of the most exciting parts of the whole show as far as I'm concerned. This is the end of the Bridge 66 over Deadman's Gulch on the Phoenix line, and this is the largest trestle on the whole Phoenix line, and there's not a whole lot left of it, and as you can see, it's starting to slowly lean off to the downhill side. I don't think there's too much time left for this trestle, but wow, it's just massive, and the towers are so tall, the beams are huge, and can just imagine what it would have looked like with the big steam locomotive chugging over top of that trestle, going up to get ore and bringing it back down again. Wow. Well, I hiked down into the remains of the old Bridge 66 trestle across Deadman's Gulch, and again, it's the biggest trestle on the Phoenix line. And it was quite exciting for me. I really enjoy old train trestles, and I wanted to thank Ivy behind the camera and Brad, our locations manager, who scouted out some cool things to find along the way, and Lorraine, who did all the research and found out all the information on the train tracks and the railways and the mines that we came to visit. And if you do decide to hike into some of these old trestles, I suggest you do it fairly soon. These trestles are 100 years old. They're not going to be standing here much longer. And it's sad to say, but the history of BC is slowly being taken back by the forest that was once here before it was built. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Hiking Back in Time. We're going to head back down into Grand Forks to finish our day there at the Grand Forks Station Pub. Thanks for joining me.